In the autumn of 2019, a federal agent named Scott received a call about trees being cut in a national forest in Missouri. Not just any trees. When he arrived at the scene, he found 8 freshly cut stumps, each one still bleeding sap into the cold October air. Black walnut. Every one of them. He drove to a nearby sawmill and started looking. He found one log at the mill whose dimensions matched a stump at the crime scene. He placed the cut end of the log against the stump face, and the surfaces fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. But a visual match is not enough for federal court. He called Richard Cron, a USDA Forest Service geneticist in Oregon, who had been quietly building something extraordinary: a DNA database for black walnut trees across 32 states. Cron's team extracted genetic material from both samples and ran them through the database. The probability that the log and the stump came from different trees was less than 1 in a million trillion. The poacher pleaded guilty to a federal felony. He received 5 months served, 3 years supervised parole, and full restitution for the timber's value. The federal government built a DNA fingerprinting program across 32 states to protect this tree because a single mature black walnut can be worth $5,000 to $25,000. Veneer grade specimens have sold for over $40,000. In Indiana, a timber cutter stole a black walnut from a private landowner and hauled it to a mill 60 miles away. Forensic geneticists matched the log's DNA to the stump. He settled out of court to avoid losing his logging license. There are roughly 1,000 significant timber poaching cases on federal land every year. The estimated annual value of stolen timber in North America is $1 billion. Black walnut, which makes up just 2% of hardwood forest cover in the eastern United States, is the single most targeted species. This is a tree so valuable that the federal government built a DNA identification program across an entire continent to protect it from theft. It is also, according to centuries of traditional medicine and an increasing body of laboratory science, one of the most powerful antiparasitic organisms on the planet. The question is whether modern science has actually proven that. I'm going to be honest with you about what we know, what we do not know, and why nobody with money has any reason to find out. Juglans nigra means black nut of Jupiter. The Romans did not name it lightly. Pliny the Elder documented walnuts' medicinal properties in the 1st century AD. 17 centuries later, the English herbalist Nicholas Culpeper prescribed black walnut. Preparations to draw poisonous venom from bites and wounds. But it was the indigenous nations of eastern North America who understood this tree most completely. The Cherokee, the Iroquois, and other nations brewed the hulls into teas and decoctions to treat intestinal worms, skin infections, fevers, and diarrhea. They crushed the hulls and dropped them into streams to stun fish. The same compound that paralyzed fish also paralyzed intestinal worms. Native Americans observed this and built a medical practice around it that lasted centuries. The Amish communities of Lancaster County and Holmes County carried this knowledge with them from Europe and deepened it across 2 centuries of American farming. Every Amish homestead in the black walnut belt of eastern America, in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana, has at least one mature tree on its property. Not for the timber value, though a single tree could fund a family for a season. For the medicine. The green hulls are harvested each summer before they blacken. They are steeped in grain alcohol in glass jars that sit on shelves in root cellars and barns. This is not a recent discovery. This is knowledge so old that the Amish cannot trace which generation first learned it. It simply has always been. To understand why this tree's hull eliminates parasites, you need to understand what this tree does to everything around it. Black walnut produces a compound called juglone, not just in its hulls, but in its roots, leaves, bark, and the soil beneath its canopy. Most plants that grow within the drip line of a black walnut die. Tomatoes wilt and collapse within weeks. peppers yellow and stop producing. Blueberries and pine trees succumb. The juglone seeps from the roots into surrounding soil, enters competing plants through their root systems, disrupts their respiratory enzymes at the cellular level, and kills them. Botanists call this allelopathy, the ability of one organism to suppress the growth of another through chemical secretion. Most plants practice some form of it. Black walnut is the grand master. It does not share territory. It eliminates competition at the molecular level and has been doing so for millions of years. This is the same compound that traditional medicine claims eliminates parasites inside the human body, a chemical potent enough to kill trees through the soil. Here's what the science actually says. Stay with me, because this is where most channels making videos about this tree will lose their honesty. In laboratory studies, juglone has demonstrated toxicity against roundworms, tapeworms, and protozoa, including Giardia. It works by inhibiting enzymes that parasites need for metabolic function, effectively starving them of energy. The mechanism is documented in animal studies, primarily poultry and livestock. Black walnut hull extracts reduce parasite burdens and egg counts when added to feed. The Pharmaceutical Society of Australia has stated that black walnut is effective against ringworm, tapeworm, pinworm, and other intestinal parasites. But here is the part that most videos on this topic will not tell you. There are no large, rigorous clinical trials proving that black walnut hull eliminates parasites in humans. 0. The laboratory evidence is strong. The animal evidence is promising. The traditional use spans centuries across multiple cultures and 2 continents. But the gold standard of modern medicine, a double-blind, placebo-controlled human trial, does not exist for this tree. And I'm not going to pretend it does. Why does the human evidence not exist? Because clinical trials cost tens of millions of dollars. Pharmaceutical companies fund them to protect patents on synthetic drugs they can sell for profit. Black walnut is a tree. You cannot patent a tree. No company will spend $50 million to prove that a hull you can pick up off the ground for $3 works as well as a drug they sell for $20 a dose. The global antiparasitic drug market is worth $26 billion in 2025. The segment specifically targeting intestinal worms, the anthelminthic market, is worth $3.6 billion. GlaxoSmithKline, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson dominate this space. These companies fund the trials. These companies own the patents. These companies set the research agenda. A free tree is not on that agenda. That is not a conspiracy. That is economics. And that distinction matters, because in the world of medicine, unproven does not mean disproven. It means unfunded. Consider what has come before this tree. Aspirin came from willow bark, a remedy used by ancient Egyptians and Hippocrates for thousands of years, before Bayer synthesized it in 1897. Morphine came from poppies, documented in Sumerian clay tablets from 3400 BC. Quinine came from the bark of the cinchona tree, used by Peruvian indigenous healers to treat fever for centuries before European medicine discovered it. Artemisinin, the most important antimalarial drug in the world, came from sweet wormwood, a plant used in Chinese medicine for 2,000 years. Tu Youyou won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2015 for isolating it. Every one of those drugs started as a traditional plant remedy that someone with funding decided to investigate. Black walnut has not received that investigation, not because the chemistry is weak, because the economics are wrong. The most famous protocol using black walnut was developed by Dr. Hulda Clark, a physiologist who earned her doctorate from the University of Minnesota. In her 1993 book, Clark outlined an 18-day cleanse, combining 3 herbs, black walnut hull tincture to kill adult parasites, wormwood capsules to kill larval stages, and ground cloves to destroy eggs. Each herb targeted a different stage of the parasite life cycle. The protocol was used by millions of people worldwide. But I need to be direct with you. Clark also claimed that parasites cause all cancers, sold unvalidated diagnostic devices, and made broader claims that mainstream science has thoroughly examined and rejected. McGill University published a detailed critique of her work. Her broader theories do not hold. But the 3 herbs she identified, black walnut, wormwood, and cloves, each have independently documented antimicrobial and antiparasitic properties in laboratory settings. The protocol may have been built on a flawed foundation, but the individual ingredients are not fiction. They are plants with real chemistry and centuries of documented use. The Amish did not need Dr. Clark's protocol. They did not need a university validation. They had something she did not: 200 years of consistent use across generations of families who watched what happened to their neighbors and what happened to themselves. The Amish did not theorize about parasites. They observed. What they observed across 2 centuries of farming families, eating from the same soil, drinking from the same wells, and living in proximity to the same livestock was this: the families who kept a black walnut tree and used the green hull tincture every autumn did not suffer the intestinal complaints that were common in surrounding communities. That is not a clinical trial, but it is also not nothing. The green hull of the black walnut contains the highest concentration of juglone when harvested green in late summer, July through September, before the hull blackens and oxidizes. Green hulls contain 3 to 10 times more juglone than mature brown hulls. The harvest window is narrow and the Amish know it precisely. They harvest in late July and early August when the hulls are still bright green and firm. Once the hull begins to darken, the potency drops rapidly. Every traditional preparation insists on using the green hull, fresh and unoxidized. The Amish grandmother who taught her granddaughter this in 1952 did not know the word juglone. She knew the tincture worked better when the hulls were still green. 6 generations of observation produced the same conclusion that laboratory analysis would eventually confirm. Before I show you the preparation, one warning the Amish teach every child who works the harvest for the first time. Wear gloves, and I mean this without exception. Juglone stains skin a deep brown black that lasts for days. It stains countertops permanently. It stains clothing permanently. It stained the fabric of Native American baskets for centuries without fading, and that is the same compound you are handling. If your hands turn brown during the harvest, you have confirmed the potency. The Amish grandmother who first taught you would say, the stronger the stain, the better the medicine. Quarter the hulls, pack them tightly into a glass jar. Here is the complete traditional preparation. Collect green hulls in late summer, July through early September. Wear gloves at every stage. Quarter the hulls and pack them tightly into a clean glass mason jar. Cover completely with high proof grain alcohol, at least 60%, or vodka as an alternative. Seal the jar. Label it with the date. Store it in a cool, dark place for 6 to 8 weeks, shaking it every few days. When you open it, the liquid will be a deep brown green with a sharp, bitter smell. Strain through cheesecloth into dark glass bottles, pressing the hulls to extract all liquid. The resulting tincture is dark brown green with a sharp, bitter taste. Traditional use is 10 to 30 drops in water, 1 to 3 times daily, for 1 to 4 weeks at the beginning of autumn. Always start with the lowest dose. Before I close, 4 cautions that every traditional practitioner has always observed and that you must know before using this preparation. First, black walnut hull tincture is a potent compound and should be treated with the same respect as any concentrated herbal preparation. Do not exceed the recommended dose. Second, if you are pregnant, nursing, taking prescription medications, or have liver concerns, consult a healthcare provider before use. Juglone is processed by the liver, and interactions are possible. Third, do not give black walnut hull tincture to children under 12 without professional guidance. Fourth, this preparation is not a substitute for medical diagnosis or treatment. If you have symptoms of parasitic infection, see a healthcare provider. These cautions were observed by Amish grandmothers for 200 years before they were written into any herbalism text. They are as important as the recipe. The green hull in a jar on your shelf. 6 weeks of steeping. The same preparation in different glass, in different barns, across 200 years of Amish autumn. The same knowledge the Cherokee built a medical practice around before any European had ever walked on this continent. The same tree the federal government protects with a DNA database across 32 states because it is so valuable that people steal it in the middle of the night. One tree. Medicine, food timber tradition, and the quiet certainty of 200 years of families who found it worked. Picture this. It is 10 years from now. There is a black walnut tree in your yard that you planted from a nut you picked up off the ground for free. It is 25 feet tall and still growing. Every autumn, it drops 50 to 80 pounds of edible nuts, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, protein, and minerals. Your family cracks them open at the kitchen table, shells staining everyone's fingers brown, while the children complain and the adults laugh. The wood beneath that bark is increasing in value every year, quietly appreciating like a savings account rooted in the earth. No bank, no broker, no fees. Just a tree that gets more valuable the longer you leave it alone. The green hulls sit in a jar on your shelf, steeping into tincture the same way your great-grandparents would have made it if the pharmaceutical industry had not convinced their generation to buy pills instead. And 40 miles away in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, an Amish woman in her 70s is doing the same thing she has done every July since she was 9 years old. Harvesting the green hulls from the tree her grandfather planted, packing them into jars the same way her grandmother taught her, labeling them with a date, written in pencil on a piece of paper cut from a brown bag. The knowledge did not come from a book. It did not come from a university. It did not come from a supplement company. It came from a grandmother who loved the people she was feeding, and that grandmother got it from hers, and hers from hers, and somewhere at the beginning of that chain, further back than anyone living can trace, someone sat under a black walnut tree, watched the plants around it die, watched the parasites leave the animals that ate its hulls, and understood. They understood something that $26 billion of pharmaceutical research has never needed to confirm. Your neighbor asks about your tree. You tell them it poisons every plant around it, but feeds every person near it. You tell them the federal government built a DNA database across 32 states because people steal these trees in the middle of the night and sell the logs before dawn. You tell them it has been used as medicine for longer than most nations have existed. You tell them the Cherokee used it to stun fish and treat parasites with the same compound 2,000 years before anyone named that compound juglone. You tell them the lab evidence is real, but the human trial does not exist, not because the chemistry is weak, but because the economics are wrong. And you tell them the truth. No pharmaceutical company will ever spend $1 to prove what this tree can do, because the moment they prove it, they lose a customer forever. But the Amish already knew that. They have always known that, and now so do you. Black walnut is one tree. There are dozens more that the Amish have grown, prepared and used for 2 centuries, while the rest of the world was told to buy something at a pharmacy. These are plants with real chemistry, real traditional use, and research that nobody with a profit motive has any reason to fund. This channel exists to share that knowledge, not as alternative medicine, not as anti-science, but as the honest record of what traditional communities observed across generations, and what laboratory science has and has not confirmed. Every week, one more plant, one more preparation, one more piece of knowledge that was quietly removed from your family's understanding of the world. Subscribe. Next week, I am covering the plant the Amish use for wound infections that outperformed a standard antiseptic in a 2019 laboratory study. A plant that grows in every hedgerow in America and costs nothing to harvest. The week after that, the Amish fermented root tonic that traditional communities in 3 countries have used to reduce blood pressure for over a century, and what the one clinical study that was ever funded actually found. Both of those videos go to subscribers the moment they are uploaded. If you know someone whose family needs this kind of honest knowledge, share this video. Not because it has all the answers, because it asks the right questions. The Amish never needed a dewormer company to tell them what worked. The tree told them, "I am Eli Yoder. This is knowledge they tried to bury. We keep it alive."